And puppy.
Action.
Action.
I know, you're beautiful.
We have a special guest here for
You're
today.
Beautiful.
All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Victoria Scott, Six Pack Chick, and I am here today with Coach Kelly Klein. She is our head coach at Six Pack Chick Fitness. Today, we're going to be going over how to handle your first build in midlife. If you are a woman who is 35 plus, 40s, 50s, 60s, and you've never successfully completed a build, we are going to go over today what you need to know, what to look out for, and how to navigate this phase appropriately. All right, so what prompted this video is we had a client group call earlier today, and we had a lot of questions wrapped around how to handle mindset for building, and the clients who are currently in the early stages of building, just what to expect and what they need to be looking out for, because so many women who are in midlife are just conditioned to think diet phase, eat less, do more cardio, and are honestly just scared of gaining weight. So today's video is all about how to navigate that. And Kelly, you've done a couple builds.
Yes.
Right? So,
Yeah.
And I know I've done quite a few as well. And fortunately, I am pretty much done doing big build phases anymore, but I do think that most women, if you've never done a build, you probably need a good 2 or 3 just to get a basic foundation of muscle. And I'm not even talking for people who are trying to be fitness competitors or bodybuilders, just women who want to have a healthy amount of muscle tissue and age well.
Yeah, it took me probably a good 2 or 3 builds to be kind of where I am now. And it was really hard for me to go into a build because I was just, I was nervous about it. I didn't want to get bigger. I've spent so much of my life wanting to lose weight. So putting on weight was not something, I thought I wanted to do. And it couldn't have been like the best thing for my physique and everything to actually go through that. I think there are definitely stages that you go through. And I think there's like a misconception with building that you finish fat loss and right away you're like, you go right into a build and you're, the high calories and you're going to gain all this weight. And, it's not the case. There's phases and there's steps to it, which is why, we wanted to talk about, what to expect right after a fat loss phase and going into a build.
Yeah. And for those of you who have followed the channel, this is Gimli. He is my new puppy. His heart's pounding. He's like, oh my gosh, we're on camera. I'm nervous.
He's a star.
Yeah, so he's got puppy energy, and it is about 6 p.m. here in Las Vegas right now, so he has way too much energy for both of us. All right, so one of the concerns that came up today was mindsets of building, but I want to take a step back and talk about, you don't just jump into a build, I think is step number 1. If you have anxiety or fear or anything like that around building muscle, increasing your calories, I think the key point is you don't go from like 0 to 60, right? So most women are either, from my experience, they're either sort of all over the place with their nutrition, or they have just completed like a pretty aggressive diet phase where they're really low calorie, right?
Yeah.
So what's the first step then, going from a diet phase into a build?
So, I think the first thing is, obviously we have to slowly work the calories up. You don't just want to go from, like 1,500 to like, okay, now I'm on 2,200. That's a lot. It's very aggressive. I like to go more slow and steady with it. And so, yeah, I think there's a misconception that right when you finish fat loss, you're going to go right into high calories, and it doesn't work that way. We have to slowly build up. And, technically for the first couple weeks, you're not on low calories, but you're like slowly getting up there. So you could still see some body recomposition. You can still see some fat loss in that too. So especially if you do it, the right way, and you don't just say, okay, my dieting phase is done, now I can eat whatever I want. I think that's the worst mistake that you can make in fat loss and anything, is just saying like, okay, my diet's over, I can eat whatever I want now, because you're so much more susceptible to putting on the weight that you don't want to put on.
Yeah. All right. So step number 1 is to just gradually start to increase your calories. And I think that's a smart way to do it too, rather than thinking you need to jump up to this. If you go to one of those online calculators and you just plug in your numbers and you say, hey, I want to build and I want to gain weight, it's going to spit out like the high end of the number, and you might be way over here. And you probably don't even need to do that. The body is responsive to every incremental increase or change that you make. So you can see some recomposition, you can see some muscle gain without even being at this high calorie point just yet. And I think that's one of the biggest sort of misconceptions that people have, like what is required. There is a lot of, we've seen this, trainers or talk show podcast hosts or whatever who say that you need to be at 3,000 calories and they're just spitting out numbers. And the reality is not everybody needs to be at this huge surplus to even gain muscle. For some of it is your genetics.
Yeah.
Some people have an easier time. Their body wants to put on muscle more readily than others, regardless of age. And even regardless of hormones, right? Like I have plenty of clients who are women who are 50s and 60s and genetically their bodies just want to put on muscle. And I also have clients on the other end of the spectrum.
Yes, where they're just a lot more petite and it really takes a lot more to, and I think also too, everyone's body is so different with how they just respond to different calories. Like certain bodies just can't handle that much food and it's just, it is what it is. And some bodies can handle a ton of food. And so to have like a blanket statement, like you should be eating, 2,600 calories before you even think about starting fat loss. It's like, well, that doesn't really apply to everybody. It would be great if it did, but it doesn't.
Yeah, it's not true that you need to eat a certain amount of calories. It's person specific. And probably one of the biggest myths floating around is that you need to just be eating this absurd amount of food to build muscle, when that's not the case. Building muscle does require adequate food and adequate protein, but the primary thing is the training stimulus being there.
Yes.
Once the training stimulus is there and adequate food for your body, your genetics, your starting points, muscle growth will happen, and it's not this fixed number.
More food doesn't equal more muscle. More calories doesn't equal more muscle. It really comes down to the stimulus, because you could eat all the food you want, but then if you go into the gym and you kind of lift like wimpy, you're gonna just probably put on some body fat, and then you have to turn around after you finish your build, and then you have to lose all this weight that you just put on. And if a lot of it was body fat, then you're kind of left with the same body that you had before you started.
Yeah. All right, so how do you know if somebody needs to increase their calories? How do you gauge that? Yeah,
so on our weekly check-ins, a couple of the questions that we ask is about hunger, energy, sleep, all of that.
Recovery,
workouts. And so if any of those are kind of off, if they're like, hey, I'm feeling really hungry, or I didn't have enough energy, of course, to me, that would be like, okay, like let's, look at increasing food. Or, I think that's probably the biggest factor that I would look into, because we want to make sure that you have enough energy and you're not like starving, and, we're being able to increase your food in that way. So that would probably be one of the things. I think also too, I would take a look at the scale, and if we're kind of gaining a little too quickly, then I probably wouldn't be so quick to continue to increase calories. I would probably try to level that out a little bit, because you don't want to see a weekly increase if it going that's most likely going to be fat. You're not going to be gaining a pound of muscle a week, unfortunately.
Yeah. That would be nice.
Yeah, that would be really nice. So I think there's a lot that goes into it. So to have one answer, there's a few.
Yeah, so it's training stimulus, and I think that's really where the root of our discussion with the clients earlier was about, was, I'll say, impatience, for lack of a better word, of the mindset that we have today is like Amazon now. Right? And when you're in a diet phase, you get these quick wins every week. You see a pound drop, you see your clothes fit differently. And when you are building, muscle doesn't grow that quickly, right? Especially for women and even smaller people. It doesn't grow that quickly, and I think because we're so conditioned in our society to think now, one of the biggest challenges or risk, what I call an obstacle for building, is feeling like there is no change after doing all this work for 2-3 weeks and being like, is anything changing? But the reality is you need 4, 6 months, 9 months. For some people, I know people who will do full 1-year builds or even longer to make the changes they want to make. So from I guess if you could think about when you were building, how did you navigate feeling like nothing's changing? And I just wish I was lean right now.
Yeah, so
right?
for me, to be totally honest, there were so many times where I would be like, okay, I'm done. Like, I want to go back to fat loss. And it was just constantly wanting to, and thankfully I had a coach / boyfriend who would tell me like, no, you're building. Like, no, you're building. I'm like, okay. And it was cool because eventually I started to really see like my, clothing start to fit different in a good way. Like, yeah, I was a little more, I guess fluffy, you could say, than I wanted to be, but I could tell that I was going to get to a point where like it would be worth it. And if I would have like gone and stopped and been like, okay, no, I want to go back, I would have never gotten to where I wanted to be, and I never would have had the gains that I wanted to get. And so I think someone said something about their comfort zone and that we talked about earlier. And I think if you're just always going back to what's comfortable, you're never going to change. So clearly there's a reason why you want to make a change. So whatever you were doing wasn't serving you and it wasn't working. So why not just give it your all, do something different, commit to it, and then I think you'll be really happy with what happens on the other side.
Yeah, muscle building is really tricky because it's not the opposite of fat loss. It's a totally different thing completely. And I think that's where people get confused or frustrated, is they think it's just the opposite of fat loss, when in reality is you could lose 20 pounds in a few months, but you're not going to put on 20 pounds of muscle in a few months.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. Like,
Yeah,
it just doesn't happen.
It doesn't work that way.
And so the biggest challenge is the risk of just losing interest, feeling like things aren't changing, and then if anything, maybe clothes do fit a tiny bit tighter. Some of that can be just water weight, because usually you're consuming more carbohydrates, which pull more water into the muscle. You might be more sore because you are training heavier, so you've got some inflammation, you have just more food in your digestive system. So you just do feel heavier in general for a period of time, and trusting that the payoff is there at the end, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where taking your build, just as serious as you would your fat loss. Like, don't, just because you're gonna build doesn't mean you can eat all the, crappy food, daily, or, all that stuff, or kind of lag on your workouts or whatever. Like, you should be taking that time just as serious as you would a cutting phase. And I think that's where people do themselves a disservice sometimes, is they kind of let their foot off the gas and they start to, enjoy a couple, and you can definitely enjoy some more treats here and there, but when you start to do it all the time and now your diet is just wild, you start to just, accumulate more body fat, and you just kind of go away from the initial goal of like putting on that muscle. So staying in it and staying focused, I think is tough too. And I think people feel like, oh, I can never, I'm always going to be like in the mindset of wanting to do something and I just want to have a break from it. But all the good stuff is worth doing. So.
Yeah. I have not seen a woman who's in her 50s or 60s have less of a result because they're older. It's, are you willing to put the time in and stay consistent for adequate amount of time to actually get the results?
Yeah.
Right. And it's a lot of women will chalk it up to like a hormone factor or menopause or whatever, or time. Let's fill in the blank of whatever the reason is. But reality is that like muscle building requires skill set of training. Like you have to really be able to train proficiently. You do need to be training to near failure. We know that through multiple studies demonstrating that this is how you signal for hypertrophy. Adequate food needs to be there. You can't be, I like to say, you can't be half pregnant. So you're either in a build or you're not. So this week you can't be higher calories, the next week you feel like cutting. If you do that, you're completely wasting your time. You really have to.
Essentially just yo-yo dieting.
Yeah, you have to be in the phase. You can't be one foot in the phase and then not. And you know what? I would say, people who say women should do a bulk, if you wanted to bulk, and to your point, like people eating whatever they feel like, you could do it, but
it's a slippery slope.
You have to also then accept that rather than putting on the majority of the weight be muscle is the goal. It might be a 60-40 split or a 50-50 split where like half the weight is muscle, half the weight is fat, because dietary choices do matter. And what happens is when the slippery slope, something creeps in, and then the next week it's a little bit more, and the next week the training starts to suffer, and the next week we take off, and next thing you know, you're like, how did I get so far off track? So I agree with you. I think the tracking and being accountable and consistent in that build phase, just like you would in a dieting phase, matters so much more in the results at the end of the build. Like, how much weight did you put on?
Yeah, because, end of the build, most of the time you're going to want to, go into fat loss, right? To kind of like show off everything you've built. Well, if you put on, let's say you put on 20 pounds and most of it is fat, you're going to have to really work hard to lose that weight. And as you know, like going into a calorie deficit, all of that, you might lose a little bit of muscle. So did you really just go through that whole build to put on that weight to then have to lose it all and possibly lose that little bit of muscle that you just, spent a year or, whatever, trying to build? It's like, it's just not worth it. You have to be like smart about it, and, you have to give up some stuff sometimes, and it's not easy. I feel like if this was like super easy, everybody would be in shape.
Yeah, you know what? The actual tactics, I was talking to a client yesterday about this, the actual tactics for weight loss or building, it's not hard to get on the treadmill. Right? It's not. Is it actually difficult to drink water? It's not actually difficult. It's what's hard is getting through what's up here, which is again what's sparked this conversation to begin with, is like getting through the mindset of it, because getting to the gym for most women isn't necessarily the hardest thing. It's not getting to the gym. It's not doing the walk. It's not even finding a healthy meal to eat. It's what's happening between your two ears that's getting in the way. Yeah, if you were to just write out instructions of how to get in shape, it's pretty simple. It's just simple. Do this, and do this. Okay, great, easy enough. But then you have to think of like your dieting history, what you think, your limiting beliefs, your this, your that, your family, whatever. So everybody has a different story, and everyone has a different thing that holds them back. And that was one of the things that we talked about today, was like, what usually holds you back from your goal? And 9 times out of 10, whenever you're starting to feel yourself kind of circle back and maybe not be able to reach a goal, it's because of that reason. And so I got into a little bit of a debate with a very popular fitness nutrition scientist, I think. I don't know if he's a PhD or not. I think he has a master's, about what body fat a woman should be when starting to build. And they said something about like on the upper end of 20+%, 25, 28%. And to which I said is way too much body fat for a woman to start building, because by the time she starts to do that build phase, she will be overweight, like clinically, like classified as overweight. And that's where you start to see some metabolic health markers start to shift, and you start to risk other potential issues. And on top of that, I don't know any woman who wants to be pushing their weight up higher when they're already in that body fat category. Typically, I would suggest most women starting a build on the leaner end of the spectrum, because it gives them a long runway to build for long enough to get the result that they need. And to your point, when they do go into that future diet phase, they aren't having to go so far into a diet. The longer that you diet and stay in a caloric deficit, the more at risk you are of losing that muscle that you just built. Because dieting, again, that's dependent on genetics. I know some women can hold muscle very, very well in a diet phase. Other women, not so much. And you want to reduce that risk altogether. So, and I think from like a logistical standpoint of just mapping out like what's strategically the best way to do it, there's one way, but also just working, people put this stuff on social media all the time that don't actually work with real women. They are looking at textbooks or some studies, and they're making these statements, but I'm like, I haven't seen any of your clients to walked through this process ever, but we've hundreds, right? And I don't know a single woman who wants to start a build when their body fat is that high. And to optimize their results, right? And I feel like a lot of times if you are starting out like that, just getting into the gym with a really good structured program and maybe just eating enough protein, not in this massive surplus, that can already start to getting some recomposition. So you don't need to eat, because again, more food in doesn't equal muscle. Like eating a bunch of food isn't gonna turn into muscle. Do you ever see people are like, oh, I want to turn this into muscles? That doesn't actually work. They're two completely different tissues. Fat does not convert into muscle. Muscle does not convert into fat. They're literally two different tissues in the body. So fat cells shrink and expand. Muscle grows and it also breaks down. So I think that's just really another misconception. You're not going to turn fat into muscle.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, there are plenty of women that we work with that come in that just need to restructure how they approach their training, restructure how they approach their cardio, and also how they split up their macros to potentially, and that itself doesn't even require eating more food. But again, the mindset of it is like, okay, am I really entering this phase where I'm not going to look shredded? The scale might go up. How long do I have to be in a phase? Like, I will say, especially in the first few months, it almost does feel like literally nothing is changing.
Yeah, the photos look the same. You start to look and you're like, these look exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like, nothing's changing. Yeah, it's like you got to play the long game in this. You know?
Muscle grows by like centimeters, and once you realize that concept, it's like, okay, that's not actually even going to be visible in photos for several weeks or months. Also, another thing that a lot of people don't talk about. We talk about it a lot because we're tall. If you're a taller person, you need more poundage of muscle, and that's also not going to be visible for like months, like many months, and for a lot of women, it will take multiple builds to fill in their limbs, because whether you are 5 feet tall or 5'9", 5'9", right? We still build muscle at the same pace.
It just looks very different.
Yeah, so a shorter, or I guess an advantage if you are a shorter woman, while 5 to 10 pounds of body fat will look significant on you, wouldn't necessarily look significant on us because we're taller. The opposite is true for building. 5 to 10 pounds of muscle will look significant on a shorter body, and it won't look like a whole lot to a taller girl. So something that I think that preparing yourself, knowing, hey, I'm gonna have to do a build phase and probably multiple build phases to create the amount of muscle tissue that I want or need.
Yeah, and I think also too, there's a difference between being in a build and continuously bringing calories up, and then just not being in a dieting phase. Sometimes you just need to be at maintenance. Maybe you're not ready for a build or whatever, but just sometimes you just need to be in maintenance, because you cannot be in a fat loss phase all year. I think that's a really, really bad mindset to be in, because first of all, I don't think you can even do it. I think what's going to happen is you're going to be in it for a while, then you're going to go off on the weekend, and then you're going to say, okay, diet starts Monday, and then you're going to be in fat loss for a little bit longer, and then Thursday happened and you ate whatever. And then that's where I think people come up with this thing where they're like, I've been dieting on 1,000 calories and I'm not losing weight. It's like, well, if we look at it in a bigger picture, like maybe Monday through Thursday you were eating 1,000 calories, but then like Friday happened and you were starving and you went out to eat. Or on the weekend came and you went out to eat and you didn't account for it, and now you're not. So now you're just like starving yourself for X amount of days out of the week, and then going off on other days of the week when you could have just been averaging a little bit better. So sometimes it's just a mental thing. Sometimes you really just need to not be in a dieting phase, because sometimes, we've had it where it's just a lot mentally and people are just like, I'm over it, and you need to just spend some time not being in a dieting phase.
Yeah, I think setting expectations up front when you enter into a phase, like what to expect is the biggest thing that most people. I asked Jen when I was filming with her earlier today, I said, when you first hired a coach and did your first build, did you really know that you were going to be gaining weight? And she did say yes to her, because I was like, I don't think that I kind of knew, but I don't think I really accepted the fact that I was going to be gaining weight.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It's like the scale's going up, I'm getting fat.
Yeah.
Like, no.
It is one of those things that sometimes you just have to put your head down and just trust. A lot of women have had children, so I use that analogy a lot. Like you go through this process for 9 months, and you're willing to do it because you know that the payoff is going to be at the end of this long stretch of discomforts, sacrifice, all the things. And building muscle is pretty much comparable. So I feel like women are better equipped than men actually to build, but it's our society that's just conditioned us to just seek that, always be in a fat loss phase and always be seeking these like Amazon now. I just did a lifting session and my delt's bigger.
Yeah, right? I think it's hard too, because on social media and stuff, you'll see a ton of these like 6-week challenge, 8-week challenge, 12-week challenge, and you see these before and afters, and you just think like, okay, like I should look how I want to look in 12 weeks, and it doesn't work that way. A lot of that is just all marketing. I've never seen anyone get their dream body in 12 weeks.
Yeah, but you can look better. I mean, I remember I look back at I kind of did some not knowing better, and this is before there was even like really social media and this kind of content wasn't out there, I sort of did some accidental builds. So wasn't really following anything, but I definitely was eating more calories and I was still training. So I put on some muscle, but I also put on, I know from experience, body fat that was totally unnecessary, and I had to work through that multiple times. I think that phase for me taught me a lot, and even though at the end of it I looked better, you can still continue to improve. Like, you can get a great result in 12 weeks, but that's not the end all be all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I think it also goes back to kind of the whole purpose of kind of what we're talking about is you could go through that 12-week, most likely a lot of these programs are like fat loss, 12-week things.
Yeah.
But after that 12 weeks, you need to have a plan. You can't just go the 12 weeks and then be like, okay, I'm done, and then go right back to what you were eating before. You will probably gain all that weight right back.
Yeah.
So that reverse diet and that build phase is, they're both all important. So all the phases are important. You can't just like hop from one to the other.
Yeah. You just did a DEXA scan recently.
I did. Yes, I did it, like a week ago? So I did that. I had a good amount of muscle. I did lose a little bit of muscle from the last year that I did it, but I was pretty happy with it. And then, I was at about 16% body fat, which I was pretty happy with considering I haven't been dieting or anything, and I've just been at like maintenance calories for a while. But it was actually pretty cool because this time I was eating maintenance calories, not doing like any cardio at all, and I was 16%. And then the last time I did a DEXA, I had a little bit more muscle, but I was doing a lot. I was like dieting hard, I was doing all my cardio, and I was 16%. So I'm at a better starting point for this next fat loss phase now, because I, higher calories, not doing the cardio, just like barely doing steps, and same body fat. So
yeah. See, that's the win, and that's the benefit after doing the build phases that you get to. That people who only do diet phases never get to that ever. Yeah,
I was able to like maintain at 2,000-ish calories, and then a couple off-tracked meals on the weekends and things like that. Whereas before, my gosh, if I would have eaten like that, I would have been putting on weight like crazy. Yeah. So having more muscle on me, I think has made a really big difference, and I'm able to just maintain. I don't have to be as extreme. I think if I would have stayed in what I was doing before, having to do these extremes, it's not a fun place to be. So sometimes it's like, okay, let me just put my head down and do what I don't want to do, be uncomfortable for a while, because eventually it's going to pay off. And now I'm like, in a really great spot. I can start my fat loss
flexibility.
phase. Yeah, where I was when I was like really trying.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you got to just believe in that payoff at the end. You got to really just embrace that, because I describe it as like putting deposits into your fitness bank account, and most people have just been withdrawing for like years, if not decades, and then they want to go have all this fun still, and I'm like, well, you've already been having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I know, and I say that with all sincerity because I did the same thing. I had my fun. Once you put more deposits into the fitness bank account, you can withdraw, like what you said, have an off meal, and it almost like virtually doesn't affect you at all.
Yeah. But I think if you're going into like just starting your fitness journey and going into fat loss, and you're like, okay, well, when can I have my cheat meals? It's like, that's such a bad mindset to be in. When you're very first starting, you're already asking about cheat meals. It's like, okay, let's slow it down a little bit.
You've already been doing that. Yeah. So at the end of the day, what we walk our clients through, and again, if you're new to the channel, the majority of our clients, 98% of our clients are over 40, 90% are probably over 45, and go through the same processes with no issue, no issue building muscle. Once they go through the process, the amount of muscle that the average woman might put on in a month might be a pound, maybe 2, if they're very proficient at training and they're really consistent. But there is a variable there, and there really is virtually no difference from somebody who is, 25 to 55 in their muscle building abilities. It's the plan that they're following. It's just having that mindset of, okay, I'm just gonna put my head down and do the work.
Yep.
Right? And go through the phase, go through the unknown.
Yep.
Yeah. So we would love to know in the comments, let us know if you have done a build phase. What were your results? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What challenges did you have? And also, what questions do you have for us? We can always do a follow-up video to the build mindset, what to expect, and what look out for to avoid any pitfalls. But go ahead and comment below. Let us know what you want to see next, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye.